The railroads is America's first big business, so they need to devise new management techniques to have some organization. Railroads helped the economy by requiring so many resources to build. Railroads needed the right resources to be built correctly. Railroads gave more means of transportation for a lower cost than average transportation. Chicago is the center of most things like our railroads. Since 1915 is where the people would ride the train to. Having the railroads built created job opportunities for many cowboys who needed work. Russia needed railways too, so they would have job opportunities. The Transcontinental Railroad provides them with jobs. The government has ownership of railroads to revolutionize the economy to make it better. Railroads were key to the industrial success in the 19th century to increase commerce in the integrated national market. Towns never wanted railroads because the cowboys took a personal interest in railroads running through their land. The engine and horn of the railroad would destroy peace and quiet that they have in their town. Some people blame railroads for prevailing food prices because they are so expensive to build and they need more money for the resources, which makes prices higher.
Thomas Edison created many inventions, but his favorite was the phonograph. While working on improvements to the telegraph and the telephone, Edison figured out a way to record sound on tinfoil coated cylinders. In 1877, he created a machine with two needles, one for recording and one for playback. When Edison spoke into the mouthpiece, the sound vibrations of his voice would be intended on the cylinder by the recording needle. Edison finally made a breakthrough with the first light bulb. In October 1879, with a bulb that used a platinum filament, and in the summer of 1880, hit a carbonized bamboo as a viable alternative for the filament, which proved to be the key to a long-lasting and affordable light bulb. Edison began working on motion pictures after seeing a lecture by Edward Muybridge, who used his zoophrascoscope to stimulate the motion of animals. Edison's discussion with Muybridge stimulated him to take up the subject of moving pictures. In doing so, he sought to design an instrument that does for the eye what the phonograph does for the ear. Edison's first design involved phonographing a series of pictures on a cylinder that could be viewed through a microscope as they turned. In addition, he planned to create sounds by linking his device with a phonograph. The films were made in Black Maria, a tar paper shack, studio in Edison's West Orange laboratory. The roof of the Black Maria lifted up so that the sunlight could come into the black interior, and the whole building revolved on the track so it could flow to the sun. Developed in the 1830s and 1840s by Samuel Morse and other inventors, the telegraph revolutionized long-distance communication. It worked by transmitting electrical signals over a wire laid between stations. In addition to helping invent the telegraph, Samuel Morse developed a code bearing his name that assigned a set of dots and dashes to each letter of the alphabet and allowed for a simple transmission of complex messages across the telegraph lines. The code assigned in the alphabet and numbers a set of dots and dashes based on the frequency letters used. When transmitted over the telegraph system, was renarded as marks on the piece of paper that the telegraph operator would then translate back in English. Rather quickly, it became apparent to the operators were able to hear and understand the code just by listening to the clicking of the receiver, so the paper would be replaced by a receiver that created more pronouncing beeping sounds. In 1874, the initial idea of the telephone formed in his mind. As he later explained it, if I could make a current of electricity vary in intensity precisely as the air varies in density during the production of sound, I should be able to transmit speech telegraphically. 2 years later, he applied for a patent, which he granted on March 70, 1876. On March 10th, the first coherent, complete sentence, "The famous Mr. Watson, come here, I want you," was transmitted in his laboratory. Lastly, Henry Bessemer developed the first process for manufacturing steel inexpensively in 1856, leading to the development of the Bessemer converter. He was knighted in 1879.
This picture symbolizes the riots and or strikes that the workers of the factories would do because of the long hours they have with a very small amount of pay. The average wage was given about $16 a week. Some employees only made $2, $3, $4, or $6 a week. Women were not allowed to work except on very rare cases. Farming was no longer the main economy of the country. We were producing more factories now, and coal was the fuel of those factories. So child labor was getting more common within the coal mines. The discovery of oil provided a new source of fuel. The discovery of the Spindletop geyser in 1901 made a huge gain in the oil industry. In a year, more than 1,500 oil companies had been created, and oil became the dominant fuel of the 20th century and a main part of the American economy. Coal was in for the huge need of energy to run the new technologies and inventions during the Industrial Revolution that provided a real opportunity for coal to fill its first role as the most used worldwide supplier of energy. Steel's durability and strength is some reasons it is used in construction for building skyscrapers. The frames made out of steel lasted longer and were cheaper than the second industrial revolution before. Since America had a huge amount of immigrants during the revolution, there was hardly any space in the city. Skyscrapers allowed more homes and offices to be built while using much less land.